Mannix, what do you make of all this?
Well, I'm disappointed, really, in one way, that we're still having this conversation, around, what is basically, an international global criminal organisation that is known as the Christian Brothers. This organisation, for decades, has been involved with the wholesale rape, torture and abuse of innocent children in their institutions in Ireland. There's the ample proof within the Ryan report. It's disappointing, but it's a fact that the government and this state indemnified all those individuals.
Mannix, if you don't mind, if I could just make a clarification of this, that there is no suggestion that individual Christian brothers, that you're not making a suggestion now that that all individual Christian brothers are consciously members of a criminal organisation, and are in any way personally responsible, culpable for what was done.
I understand the liable implications, and that's not what I mean by that. What I mean by that is that the Ryan report has been out in the public domain for quite some time, and it would be quite appropriate to put at their doorstep that as a result of this report, that one cannot step back from this report without the final conclusion, given the state of play at the moment, given the fact that they hid documents, they're still in denial about it, that this organisation at its head covered up this activity. I know there are good individuals within there, we all know this, but everybody has to be accountable within this. Right. And I have not heard any strong accountability. I have not seen massive resignations from the Christian Brothers, nor have I seen them hand over their schools, lock, stock and 2 smoking barrels. What's really important here as well is the disgusting, disgraceful behaviour of this state. And that we can quite rightly say tonight that this is a corrupted state. We've had the banks, we've had the property deals, and now we have a situation where still in operation, still out there roaming around the streets, are, hordes, as far as I'm concerned, of religious paedophiles, those who have abused children, no accountability, who have still got children in their hands. It's important to know this, that during the Ryan report and during the redress, the Commission of Redress, that it was a practice for solicitors to railroad those who had been abused into redress rather than into Garda Síochána stations to make robust statements about what happened to them in terms of the criminal activity. That the whole thing was conspiratorial to basically and condemn and not hear the voices of those people who were locked into those institutions, who were by and large coming from one particular sector of society, working class society. The Ryan report details these lives of the poorest of the poor who were shunted away, and by and large a lot of these voices have not been heard because they went to early graves. The other thing that's important to know, that all of the acts emanating from child abuse in relation to religious congregation is falling back here on Ireland, because of the fact that most of these congregations, that when they went out into missionary work, we know this from the Primetime report, emanated here from Ireland. So it's an enormous big scandal of global proportions, but it's deeply disappointing but not surprising that the justice system of this country, which gave us no regard, which gave us no quarter, gives every quarter to those, the ruling class, the empowered and the elites within the church. It's an outrage.
Can I make a point, Vincent, in fairness? I mean, and Mannix will accept this too. I mean, the Christian Brothers have been extremely contrite since as they should be, since the Ryan report came out. And Brother Edmund Garvey, who is the main man in Ireland really, to his great credit, took part in that March of Solidarity for abuse victims, which took place the week after it was published.
And he denied me to my face. I sat with Mr. Garvey in a room for over 2 hours, and while he may have walked out there in the streets with a flag and looking for atonement and all this kind of stuff in the Christian faith, the point of the matter is he hasn't actualised the acts as a human being, and they haven't really come forward. I mean, it's easy in hindsight, Vincent and Patsy, to go out there and to go on the long walks of atonement, the long walks of sorrow and all. We're constantly at this situation, but yet nobody whatsoever is called to account. And there's wholesale, you know what I mean, destruction within that.
I think it's fair that we make it clear that Edmund Garvey himself was not in any way involved personally in the acts that you've properly complained about.
We understand
and and that there's no implication at all.
There's no implication of that at all,
wrongdoing.
But the point of the matter is, he was a man in responsible position that should have actually come out straight away when all the evidence that we know was in Rome and the documentation was there. You don't have to go to Rome to know that these incidents of abuse of children were actually, factual, because they were in the files in Dublin, they were in his own files, and I am not accusing Mr. Rice or Mr. Moore of any acts.
Do we know whether he was misled?
What I'm saying is this, Vincent, an organisation like the Christian Brothers, who's had such a thing levied against them, has a role to play.
Yeah, all right, but neither do we know if he has any personal knowledge of the existence of these files. But anyway, Mary,
they're the most grotesque of crimes.
But don't expect it to be done.
Of grotesque crimes.
Yeah, I mean, don't expect it to be done. I mean, really, there's nowhere where there was even an attempt to deliver justice. The whole enterprise was about, particularly in relation to the Ryan problem, was about containment and closing down of a whole sector of our society. The poor who are incarcerated in the institutions and abused constantly for years. There hasn't been any atonement, there hasn't been any accountability or responsibility. The Department of Justice and the DPP's office have basically ignored this situation. In the same, the thing about it is that you can have all your opinions that you like. Yeah. But I'm a person actually who has gone through that system. Yeah. I'm a person who presented cases, Mr. McGarry, if you don't mind. I'm a person who presented cases.
Well, many
you know what I mean? I presented cases though. You
can't say nothing has happened.
I presented cases for prosecution. And, in many instances, they weren't acted upon because there was a deliberate act of sabotage in relation to the cases. So where is
what do you think?
What do I think happened?
I'm
not mentioning any names. I'm very aware of libel law. The cases that I had put against the Christian Brothers and the solicitors that I had used, they omitted to put those cases into the courts. They forgot to put them into the court, and the cases fell. Now, there are many examples of these situations.
Well, there's nothing to stop you bringing that forward again.
No, there is, because there's a statute-barred situation.
There's no statute-barred.
There's civil actions. There is a bar on the situation.
There was a civil action, yeah, but there's no statute-bar on criminal actions.
No, this was a criminal action. This was a civil case that was to be taken against these individuals.
Civil case.
A civil case.
Oh, I see.
Civil case. In relation to the DPP, they declined to prosecute with other evidence that was provided by other individuals. What I'm saying here is that as a person who's coming from a working class background, whose neighbours and children and who was incarcerated for long periods of our time, we have never been given justice.
Okay, I'm afraid we've got to go to a break now, but we'll continue the discussion after the break and also get to that WikiLeaks story. So join us after the break. Welcome back. I want to go back to a comment made by Mannix about Edwin Garvey, the head of the Christian Brothers in Ireland, and you said that you were in an interview with him and the implication was he didn't behave properly. Now you acknowledge he wasn't in an interview with him.
I never said he didn't behave properly. I said I was at an interview, but in actual fact he never turned up to the interview. It was Brother Gibson who took the interview.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he was the man who gave evidence to the Commission. Really, he had the charge of, he was the one who was responsible for presenting the Christian Brothers' evidence to the Commission, not Brother Edmund Garvey, who really wasn't involved in that process.
Okay, but just a minute. Like, you can't come on a live television program or radio program and make just casual allegations about it. Just a minute. Sorry, Mannix. Just you casually make allegations then, and if just bear with me now, and please, because this is serious. That other person you mentioned, Brother Gibson, again, I'm really uneasy about you drawing this man's name into this conversation in the context in which we've discussed this issue. Again, there's no suggestion of any impropriety attaching to this man whatsoever, and we've just we've got to be careful that in talking about these admittedly very serious issues, that we don't do unfair damage to reputations of people who are entirely exempt from any culpability at all in relation to all this issue. So let's just leave it at let's just leave it at that. If you don't mind, Mannix, Mannix, if you don't mind, Mannix, if you don't mind, Mannix, if you don't mind, just leave it.
Yes, that's okay.
Okay, leave it at that.
That's okay.
The point that you are making, Mary, however, about the extensive Garda investment. And in the Irish Daily Star, Glenda jail threat, Glenda Gales Gilson could face prison unless she and her brother Damien provide a statement to Financial Affairs for a wound-up car sales company. They are directors of High Court Judge Yester warned. They had 2 weeks to produce the statement, which is fairly commonplace, I would have thought. We've got to leave it there. Again, we will be inviting representatives of the Christian Brothers to come on the programme tomorrow night. And that's it for now. For more tonight's programme, log on to tv3.ie. The weather's next. Must like good night.